I'm Riley Reese. This is the Sophia Unfiltered podcast where we bring together thought leaders, wellness entrepreneurs, makers, and emerging health leaders. We're here to have raw, unfiltered conversations because sharing your stories has the power to change lives, help others heal, and transform the way we take care of ourselves. Here we go. Welcome back to the Sophia Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, Riley Reese, and today we're joined by Dr. Sheila Patel. For those unfamiliar with Dr. Sheila, she's the Chief Medical Officer at Chopra Global, where she collaborates with Deepak Chopra and the team to help people care for their well-being, experience physical healing, emotional freedom, and higher states of consciousness. Dr. Patel is also one of Deepak Chopra's lead educators in meditation, Ayurvedic lifestyle, yoga, and coaching. Dr. Sheila is a board-certified family physician and has managed her practice in Southern California for the past 15 years. In case you missed part one of this two-part episode, I recommend catching up on it. In part one, Dr. Sheila provided an overview of the Ayurveda doshas. In case you missed part one of this two-part episode, I recommend catching up on it. In part one, Dr. Patel provided an overview of the Ayurveda doshas. Today, we jump into the scientific principles of Ayurveda, explore various Ayurvedic practices, and most importantly, discuss strategies for integrating Ayurveda into your daily routine. Here we go.
Yeah, when you talk about the pitta imbalance, I think about all the combat veterans I work with. It's almost like guaranteed that there's a pitta imbalance.
For sure.
Because it's that pushing, just no pain, no gain.
Yeah, absolutely. And also that, stress and that can create a vata imbalance. And so a lot of the, we see anxiety, depression, we see pain issues, we see a lot in that population. And, sometimes you can do several different things, sometimes just one practice like meditation. There's a lot of studies on meditation and treating trauma or anxiety or sleep issues, and that sometimes that alone can do the trick. But what I find is when you combine different practices, and that was the idea in Ayurvedic medicine, it's, a lot of little things added up together, they have an exponential benefit. So 1 + 1 doesn't just equal 2, 1 + 1 = 5, because all of those different practices sort of synergize and you can achieve more, by kind of simple practices.
I love that class that you teach, Inner Pharmacy, because it really tells you there's so much you can do right in the here and now. You don't have to spend any money, but thinking about what we're taking in through our eyes, through our ears, through our noses, through our skin has a profound effect. And one exercise I'll do with people is give me a song that shows me what you feel like on the inside. And that tells me a lot about what's happening for them. And how would you like to feel? Tell me a song that shows me how you'd like to feel. And sometimes we're listening to this ragey music. We're in the car and then we get home and then it's like, how are you going to hold your baby if you come home and you're listening to rage music? So it's kind of like priming that pump. And I love what you said about those lots of little choices, because people say, oh, really? Looking at blue or green is going to help me calm down. I said, well, no, not in itself, but you're stacking the deck in your favor. If you're going to be looking at violent, bright images and then you expect to be calm, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, exactly. 5 sense therapy is very common in Ayurveda. A lot of the therapies revolve around the senses because that's how the external world enters us, is through the senses. That's our connection to the outside world. And if we're not aware of what's coming in, and then we wonder, why do I feel like this on the inside, right? Then sometimes, again, when we look at what's coming in, it can answer a lot of those questions. And I love that Ayurveda is very much about how do you feel? Because even as a practitioner, you can give people recommendations like this usually balances vata. But if somebody tries it and they come back to me and say, well, that just didn't feel good, that didn't feel right, I believe it because they're their best, they know themselves the best, right? And too many times in medicine, I, saw this with attendings and, through my training and other doctors, discounting people's experience. And that's just the opposite of what I learned in Ayurveda. Is the person's personal experience is the most important information, right? So then when I hear, oh, that didn't work for you. Okay, let's think about why and let's choose something else, right? Or the person can just on their own choose something else. So I love bringing people back. How do you feel? and how do you want to feel? And it's usually the opposite of that, right? If they're struggling.
I think this is incredible. I mean, and it sounds like Ayurveda is really the individual medicine. It's the holistic medicine. It sounds like you're actually being heard and seen by your provider, your practitioner. And I think that's interesting. And one of the things that you mentioned early on was that you were looking at treating symptoms, right? So during your practice, and we bringing back to the Ayurveda. So what role does Ayurveda really play in managing and preventing chronic disease? Are there specific conditions where the Ayurvedic approaches have shown any efficacy?
Yeah, it's an ongoing area of study because the Ayurveda is a whole systems medicine. It's not just looking at one, like your kidneys or your lungs. It's looking at the whole body and how everything's connected. So our science is designed to study one thing. Like we have a group of people, we're going to give them one drug and we're going to, measure one outcome. And it gives us good answers to certain questions, but that's not really how biology works. So it is an emerging area of study. And if you talk to all Ayurvedic practitioners, they will tell you, yes, it's dramatically helps people prevent disease, reverse disease, and also treat disease because you're getting to the root cause, and what we've found is a lot of Ayurvedic practices calm the nervous system. And so when the nervous system is overstimulated, we go into stress mode because that's what the nervous system is for. When it senses there's a lot of stimulation, it goes into what we call fight or flight physiology. It's just informing that there's a lot going on, right? And so by calming down the nervous system, we flip into the rest and digest, the parasympathetic, the healing, internal healing mode, our own self-regulation, our own self-healing that we know we have. Then inflammation. So inflammation's been found to be associated with really every chronic disease now. If you look up any chronic disease, diabetes, heart disease, even Alzheimer's, cancers, inflammation, there's some association there. So by reducing inflammation, which again, this is what you can show with meditation, with yoga, with calming the nervous system through self-massage, through aromatherapy, you can actually show. So there's like individual studies on these root causes. That's how you can justify, yeah, this might help your chronic condition because we're going to reduce inflammation. So to whatever degree the inflammation and that dysautonomia, which is a word for just an imbalance in the nervous system, has to play with that disease. When we take care of that, you'll see the symptoms get better. So that's what we see. And again, a lot of Ayurvedic recommendations focus on the gut. There was this basic principle, if our gut isn't healthy, we can't be healthy. And lo and behold, that's what we're learning in science, right? And so one of the foundational principles in Ayurveda is that typically the doshas get out of balance first in the gut, and then it spreads to the other parts of the body. So when you balance the gut, then the other things can balance. So these are all things that we're finding validated through science. And you talked about the senses. We're just beginning to understand how the senses, well, we've known for decades the senses interact with the nervous system, and all sensory input goes to the brain, and then the brain responds to that. So if you have sort of negative sensory input like violent images or raging music or unhealthy stimulation, those signals are going to go to the brain and the brain's going to send down stress hormones. When you have calming touch, healing touch, loving touch, when you have calming pictures of nature, when you're smelling natural, these lavender and sandalwood and a lot of these smells that we show do reduce anxiety, they calm the nervous system, then you're going to help reduce that root cause of a lot of different disease conditions. And, I've treated people, and many Ayurvedic practitioners I know do treat people who have diabetes, high blood pressure, autoimmune conditions, again, because once you can address the root cause and not just treat the symptoms, then a lot of those things will get better.
I know Ayurveda includes yoga, meditation. There's that study that you all did at the Chopra Center that I still talk about to this day. Could you tell our listeners about it, where you invited some people to just come enjoy the resort, and then you invited a group to come learn meditation and practice that? Such a powerful study, especially talking about reversing the effects of aging and disease.
Yeah, we did several studies when we were doing our programs at the center. People would come for 5 or 6 days. We had meditation retreats where they would really just come and primarily meditate and do yoga. And we drew blood from people when they first arrived and then before they left. Again, as you mentioned, we tried to have a control group too, because, a lot of times people go to a retreat and older studies, they would say, well, how do you know that's just not the vacation effect? And so we had another control group who would come to the same resort, eat, what would be considered healthy food. And we controlled for a few things that was similar to the retreat group. And yes, in fact, some things were similar. Stress levels by the end of the week on qualitative questionnaires, stress levels went down, anxiety levels went down. But in the blood, we saw unique differences with people that were doing the meditations where the gene expression went from activated inflammatory genes that have to do with chronic disease would turn down or off. Genes that had to do with longevity and health would be more expressed. And so there was a difference within thousands of genes between these two groups. So, there's this whole study of epigenetics where we're starting to learn that the choices we make inform our genes, which genes we want turned on, which genes we want turned off. It doesn't change our genes. We got half our genes from our mom, half our genes from our dad, but we have a lot of control over which ones are on, off, turned up, turned down. And one of those, as you mentioned, gene networks had to do with aging and longevity. So people who meditated, those genes were turned up for production of this enzyme called telomerase. And telomerase has been known to be a marker for aging. And when the telomerase levels go up, that's a sign of healthy aging and even reversal of aging, or we could say reversal of premature aging, because what stress does is lowers telomerase activity. So stress can actually prematurely age us. And we see that.
Are there any vitamins or minerals we can take to turn that up?
Yeah, actually, there are many things that do increase telomerase. So it's not only meditation, but exercise can do that. Again, healthy amounts. In Ayurveda, they don't say, no pain, no gain. They say you should exercise to 2/3 of your capacity, you want to leave a little bit there so you're not overdoing. There are medications that can do that. Again, hormones can increase telomerase level. And that's why we see, but again, they're not without side effects. That's why we see skin changes and different things. And that's sometimes what people desire, but with potential side effects. So, we can do, and certain foods can increase telomerase. And it's all the foods you hear about, the healthy, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, anti-inflammatories, things with omegas. So many different things can increase telomerase. And so we have all these things available to us to age in a healthy way and prevent as much disease as possible to whatever potential our genes allow. I don't give people pie in the sky sort of, it's real, I just try to be realistic. And in Ayurveda, there's that recognition that there's some things we can't change, but we can maximize our potential and not make things worse by living a certain lifestyle. So it's not woo-woo, it's not like magic or, some crazy philosophy or, things that maybe people might have thought in the past. And especially now with a lot of the science validating many of these practices, it gives us that foundation and the language of science, a way to describe what's happening. So a lot of times I still see people in a primary care office, and sometimes as I'm seeing them, I'll recognize, this is a vata and they're out of balance. And I don't launch into a big description of Ayurveda, but I may tell them, because they almost all have irritable bowel syndrome because of their sensitivities. Have you ever tried just cooking and eating your food warm and adding these certain spices to it? Like, cumin or little dried ginger or black pepper, just a little bit, because that helps them with their digestion. And then eat regular meals. And, I give them just a few little things. And then they come back a month later for follow-up and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And then I say, oh yeah, well, this comes from this healing tradition. There are lots of other things, we can talk about if you want to. And you can get the benefits of Ayurveda without, diving to and drowning in all the information.
I was just going to, Dr. Patel, for our listeners who may be new or interested in trying Ayurveda, what advice would you give them to start incorporating some of these principles without going into that, okay, I'm overwhelmed level?
Yeah, nowadays there are many, many resources. Even when I started 15 years ago, there were just like a few books, and, Chopra.com was there with a website with different articles. And now there's hundreds of websites and hundreds of resources. But I always tell people, so Chopra.com, we have articles so people can go there. I've written many articles. You can search my name, and when you click on my bio, it'll say like all the articles written by this person. And some, talk much more deeply into physical, some are mental, emotional, some is spiritual, because Ayurveda's mind, body, spirit medicine. It also appreciates the spiritual aspects of our life, meaning, purpose, connection, to nature and others outside of us, and we're starting to learn how important those things are. So there are articles there. Deepak Chopra has written many, many books, and he wrote a book, Perfect Health, that really was my probably intro to Ayurveda. And it's written very, very simply in understandable language. There's a longer dosha quiz in the book, more than 10 questions, because sometimes, 10 questions will give you a pretty good idea. But if you get a score on the website quiz and you're like, I don't know if that describes me, it may just mean that we need to ask more questions. So, you can take a little bit of a longer quiz. So there is one in the Perfect Health book. And then there are lots of books on Ayurveda for beginners. I just tell people Google and get a beginner book and, start there. And then Banyan Botanicals is one of my favorite websites for Ayurvedic information. Banyan is Banyan, like the banyan tree. So banyanbotanicals.com. They do sell a lot of, herbs that do help to balance, the doshas. And they have a lot of good information on what different dosha imbalances are, what that means, what the lifestyle things you can do. So yeah, I would tell people just, you could start with Deepak's book, Perfect Health, or there are many, many authors that have written, more recent books as well on Ayurveda. And, I always tell people Ayurveda was the people's medicine. It was meant for people to not have to spend so much money on medicine and healthcare, right? Like you can go to your kitchen cabinet and food is our medicine and spices are our medicine and plants are our medicine and our body is our medicine. Our breath is our medicine. So all of that is either very inexpensive or free, right? Your breath is free, just slowing down your breath. And so it's really, yes, you can go on a thousands of dollar retreat, or yes, you can buy very expensive herbs or supplements or what have you. But you don't have to. 95% of things, if you shift the lifestyle and take, maybe a few herbs, if you need to shift your eating and add some spices that are right for, your mind body type and what's going on, it doesn't have to cost a lot,
I love those suggestions. And thank you for reminding me about that book. I need to go reread Perfect Health because it was so applicable. It was like, do this. Yeah. and really, I mean, if you follow the recommendations, you will notice a shift.
I have not worked with anyone or heard anyone that says like, oh, that didn't work, or I didn't feel anything. The challenge is keeping up with lifestyle practices, right? And I acknowledge that I'm not perfect in my practices by any means. But one thing that's definitely shifted for me is when I'm feeling out of balance, when I, whatever, I know why. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been staying up too late watching Netflix, or yeah, I've been eating heavy food and I've been snacking between meals, none of which are, good for any of my doshas balance. So you don't feel like everything's a mystery, and that's what I found in medicine before I learned Ayurveda. Someone would come in with something and it was, I don't know what's going on. And I didn't like that. I didn't like not having an answer for someone or not even knowing where to start to tell them, what to do and to help them. And, again, as I said in the beginning, like, that's why I went into medicine. So feeling helpless, I was like, this isn't why I went into medicine, to just prescribe medications and not really see people get better. I still prescribe meds. So again, I'm absolutely not anti-medicine. In fact, I've seen miraculous things in my career that we can do, but a lot of times we don't need them. And a lot of times people have side effects from them, not always. And, so I like to have options to give people, and I really feel like people should be in charge of their health. And not everybody wants to manage their health the same way. And, sometimes there are people that I say, you could take this medicine and it would help with your blood pressure. And they're like, well, I want to try these other things first. And oftentimes that works. And when it doesn't, meds are there. And, I encourage people, don't walk around with high blood pressure, just, take this medication. And because it is a XYZ class, I know what to tell them to do to sort of balance and manage the potential side effects. So, again, that's another benefit to, understanding. And Ayurveda, again, gave me all of these wonderful foundational principles. When you treat something, think about what's happening to the rest of the body, right? And that's this whole person medicine. You don't just say, oh, I'm giving you this medicine so, your cholesterol goes down. I'm not going to think about the rest of the body, right? We have to, because whenever we introduce something, it's affecting the entire body. And so then I think, what can this person do to try to mitigate this potential side effects,
Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you think is really important for our listeners to know about Ayurveda?
I think we covered a lot of ground. I would just encourage people to, look up some of these websites, get a introduction to Ayurveda book, and, just read and see if it helps, see if it explains your life experience. More than likely, you'll see all of those things that you never had an answer for, you'll find. And so, again, Vatas who do have sensitivities, they're sensitive to the energy around them in a room. They're sensitive to the weather. They're sensitive, and sometimes they go in or they tell people that and they're like, oh my gosh, this is in your head. I always felt, once I learned this, I felt sorry for Vatas. I'm like, oh yeah, they are sensitive. They feel things that other people don't feel. It's a thing. It's real. So, and yeah, I think we covered a lot of the basics, just thinking about Ayurveda not as this esoteric, kind of medical system that people practice on the other side of the world. I always tell people it's applicable anywhere on the planet because it's based on these laws of nature. You can apply it no matter where you live, and it's timeless because these laws of nature haven't changed over time, right? And depending on where you live, the seasons can have different effects on you. The foods may be different that are grown locally. But if you go down to the qualities, what qualities, and that's where identifying the doshas and what qualities make up the doshas is helpful. But, it's like you said, Michelle, which I love, like, how do you feel? Do you feel heavy? Okay, how can you create light? And so that means I can eat light, I can lighten, I can move, I can bring in more light, like literally, I can bring in light thoughts, so it's like these qualities, oh, I feel hot. Okay, how can I bring in cool? I can cool down a little bit by cooling down my schedule. I can eat cooling foods like mint and cilantro and fruits. I can, bring in cooling colors, like you said, like blue and green, and, that balance, that pitta. And so, just start thinking about things as qualities. How do we experience life? And, then Ayurveda starts to make so much sense, and it doesn't seem like this kind of weird, like system or something that doesn't apply to you.
I love that. And on our platform, Sophia Health, we do have Ayurvedic practitioners. So if anyone's wanting a little extra boost or more guidance to get started, I think you'll really find that once you learn the principles, you'll be off to the races with it. But it is nice to have some guidance on the way.
Absolutely. I saw that. It was very exciting because we do need guidance sometimes, and so that's what, there are more and more Ayurvedic practitioners out there than ever before. There are people that were Ayurvedic physicians trained as, doctors in India. They come here, and rather than going through the whole process again, because that's not recognized as a medical degree, they just open holistic health practices of their own, but they're bona fide Ayurvedic doctors, and then for the last 20, 30 years, there were some pioneers who started Ayurvedic training programs decades ago, and now there are hundreds and hundreds of graduates of these great programs. So NAMA is the National Ayurvedic Medical Association. So absolutely check out your platform and check out the Ayurvedic practitioners. And it's ayurvedanama.org is their website, or you can just Google National Ayurvedic Medical Association. They have a, find a practitioner tab, and you can put in your city, and if you want an in-person, you'd be surprised. They're everywhere now. And within a certain reasonable drive, you can probably access an Ayurvedic practitioner to help you.
And it also sounds like, too, that once you kind of learn the principles, a lot of this is yoga and meditation, and you mentioned aromatherapy. And obviously, you can go to see your Ayurvedic practitioner from what I'm hearing, but also once you learn the principles, you could, for example, just start incorporating these into your daily life. How am I going to eat? And then, of course, wrapping it up back to Sophia Health, right? You can find the different nutritionists who, have that Ayurveda practice, or, just jump on and do the yoga, meditation, aromatherapy, whatever it is to calm your nerves.
Absolutely. A practitioner's intention is always that, you get people back to balance and you teach them how to stay in balance, right? And so that you don't need them anymore. And so people who might need a practitioner for sure, if you have something complicated, or as can happen, more than one dosha can be out of balance. Sometimes all of them are out of balance at the same time. And so you're trying these things and you don't feel like you're getting ahead, or you're confused, because there's more than one thing out of balance. That's where a practitioner can kind of help focus you and guide you. And, maybe after several months of getting things more balanced, then, like you said, you're off to the races on your own.
So maybe would be really good for those people out there who may just be feeling like, I don't feel good. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. That's when it would be really good to reach out to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can learn on your own. And, again, if you're in a fairly good state of balance and then some things happened and like again with Michelle, your vata got out of balance, and then you read, oh, I'm supposed to be eating, and it's fall, winter weather, which is cold and dry and windy. So, right now I should eat more soups and stews and warm foods and warm teas and go to bed at 10:30 and turn off the computer. And then you might feel better, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you're like, oh, but like you said, if that's not happening or it's not so cut and dry, then I would definitely recommend seeing an Ayurvedic practitioner. And they can help along with whatever healthcare provider you're seeing for any disease processes. They can definitely be a complement to whatever you're doing in your medical care. So I also want to impress on people, you don't have to do one or the other. It's not either or. If you want to completely manage things with the Ayurvedic practitioner, that's great. But most of them are used to, you're taking meds or you have these things. What can I complement with Ayurvedic lifestyle that will help you manage that, don't feel like it has to be either or. So no matter what you have going on, if you don't feel like you're thriving and at your very best, because that's the goal of Ayurveda, isn't just to get to neutral, like, oh, okay, I don't have disease now. It's to get to our full potential, to thrive and to create health and age in a healthy way. And so if you don't feel that that's where you are, I think everyone should see an Ayurvedic practitioner or at least learn about Ayurveda so you can, learn what choices you can make to stay healthy and maybe even healthier. Like, for example, a lot of the practices we haven't talked about that you hear about, cleaning your tongue and doing oil pulling and neti pot. And I talked about oil massage, but there's so many, putting oil in your ears, and there's so many practices to help keep our senses healthy. When I started doing regular neti pot, and a lot of allergists tell people, the saline rinses, you can do them if you have allergies, and it's very, very helpful. But in Ayurveda, they say do it on a daily basis to keep your breathing clear. And then when you do your breathing activities, you get even more benefit from them. And there's all kinds of studies now on nasal breathing and increasing nitric oxide. And again, pretty much every Ayurvedic practice we talk about, there's science behind it. When I started doing neti pot, I always thought, well, I'm a good breather. I don't really have any sinus issues or whatever. After I started doing it every day, I thought, oh, this is breathing. You get that extra 25% that you didn't realize you weren't having, and like you might feel you have pretty good energy. And then you start doing things, you're like, oh, now I have that 25% more. It's like pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, you dropped a lot of wisdom on us today. And I'm just curious, in your life, what are your 3 pillars that keep you forward facing? They're your non-negotiables.
For me, it's concepts. So I always try to balance activity with rest. And so for some people, activity is easy. The rest part isn't easy. For me, rest is easy, but the activity part isn't so easy. So I have to remind myself to keep those 2 things in balance. So that's one thing for me that's really important to stay healthy, is that balance of activity and rest. And then I have always found, and now there's tons of studies. We didn't really get into this a lot, but Ayurveda, again, is mind, body, spirit medicine. So one thing I do is try to connect with family and friends that bring, and have nourishing relationships that bring me joy. Just feeling joyful, like, again, that's light for me, like the opposite of, for everyone, the opposite of heavy is light. So it brings lightness to my life. So I try to, I do like, I'm fine solitary, but, I like to have those joyful, nourishing interactions with friends and family and nature. I try to make a point to look at the sunset every evening. So, it's like, again, bringing in nourishing things every day. And then purpose for me, I think, has always been a thing. I always wanted to feel like I was living, that I had a purposeful life. And so doing things like this, I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share Ayurveda, because that makes me feel light and excited, and I'm passionate about it. And I think feeling purpose, and now again, there are lots of studies on people living longer when they feel like they have a life of purpose. And so for me, those are kind of more 10,000 foot things that keep me going. And then, I try to make the good choices with food and, all the things. But, like I said, I always tell people, have compassion, give yourself some grace. Lifestyle is, you're not going to be perfect every single day, but when you're not and you start not feeling well, you'll probably know why.
Yes. And how can our listeners connect with you or learn from you, know more about you?
So I don't have a personal website yet. I keep trying to work on it, but because I've been associated with Chopra for so many years, you can read about me on the Chopra.com website, and the different articles that I've written, you can see there. I am one of the main educators for the IIN Chopra certifications, so the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. So that's a way to learn more. We have these certification programs people can sign up for. I do have an Instagram that, I'm not super active because I try to limit social a little bit, but I have an Instagram at Sheila Patel MD. And I'm also periodically on the Chopra Instagram. So I'll be leading a community cleanse. We have a detox kit. Detoxification is one of those Ayurvedic practices that's important to periodically remove physical, emotional toxins, things that are getting in the way of our health and our healing, and bring in nourishment. And that helps us rebalance several times a year. We do that. So in January, I'll be on the Chopra Instagram, kicking off a community cleanse and doing it myself as well after the holidays. And what else? I will be, I think those are the main places to find me. And, you can find me on LinkedIn as well. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for your time today. Thank you for your knowledge and just how generously you always share with us.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, this is fun. And I hope the listeners got something out of it. And, again, just start small, start with one little thing, and you can build from there. And Ayurveda has just so many great little practices you can bring into your life to support your own natural healing. So enjoy it. Yeah.
Go find your doshas, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for listening. This has been Sophia Unfiltered, a podcast by Sophia Health, the #1 marketplace for health and wellness. Find services, classes, and products from the top health and wellness providers. Book an appointment or join live classes now. I'm your host, Riley Reese. If this episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments section of your favorite podcast provider or with a 5-star rating. Let us know what your biggest takeaway from this episode was, or share it with someone you hope to inspire. Join us again next time for more real conversations, stories, and insights that help empower you with the knowledge and inspiration needed to transform how we care for ourselves.